Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel, and I'd like to welcome everyone back to this week's Daki Time. So, before the video gets started guys, I'd like to make mention that my merchandise store is still up and running. The links to my merchandise store is in the description down below. I've got my links to my Discord page. Everything you need to know is in the description down below. So if you need to find out what is going on when I'm releasing videos, or if you want to check out my merchandise store, everything is in the description down below. Also guys, if you want a question answered or asked, or if you want a topic that you need to discuss on Daki Time, please go to my Discord page and in the request tab, leave a little note there. I'll pick that up and I will see what I can do for you guys. So on to today's video. Alright guys, so today's Daki Time video, or this week's Daki Time video, sorry I should really say, comes from Tibz. He asks a question. So I'm going to mix the two here. I'm going to do a Super 6 plus a answer Tibz's question basically. So I'm going to try and combine the two here. So let's get on with Tibz's question and then we'll move on to my 6 things of what Tibz is just about to ask. So Tibz asked this. Basically, what are the most useless class spells from past and present, like the old Priest Mind Vision, or like Mocking Blow from Warriors, which taunted but could not be used in Prot Spec? Really cool question there, Tibz. Thank you so much for asking. And there are so many abilities, spells, talents that have been removed out of the game over the past expansions for one reason or another. If I was to put my quick spin on this, guys, I would say that we are at a point where we're at the lowest freedom of talents and abilities in the game right now compared to past and previous expansions. But with that said, let's get on to my Super 6. I wouldn't say useless class spells because I've got a couple of cool spells in here, but I've tried to find the most irrelevant spells or abilities to today's current playstyle. So let's get on to my Super 6 talents, I guess. The very first one that I've got on the list here, guys, is the Mage Wards. If you guys remember all the way back to when we had the Mage Wards, we had the Frost Ward, we had the Fire Ward, and then eventually came the Mage Ward. These were wards that could absorb a certain amount of damage depending on the ward you were using, such as Frost would absorb frost damage and Fire for fire, and then Mage Ward was brought in to replace both Fire and Frost wards, and that would absorb both Fire and Frost damage. All of these were removed in Mr. Pandaria though, just before or just as Mr. Pandaria was being brought out. But these would later see changes and they would develop into the barriers we see now, like the Prismatic Barrier, the Fire Barrier, I do forget the name of that one, and then we've also got the Frost Barrier or the Ice Barrier as well. So we do see that this talent did sort of alter from being alive and vacant in the game to being changed, and now it has basically changed to the barriers we see. So the wards technically have been removed. I think the wards were pretty cool, but all in all, they are gone. We don't use them anymore, but we just use the barriers, which are realistically a replacement to just absorbing all damage. So the second one on the list here, guys, is the Shaman Sentry Totem. Now this was a really cool ability by the sounds of it, but had very limited uses, and the majority of the uses were basically in PvP, battlegrounds, and possibly arenas. So basically the Sentry Totem was a totem that the Shaman could place down, and they could right-click this. They would take on the vision of the totem and basically see what the totem saw in a far distance or far away place. This would also alert the Shaman when the totem was being attacked. Obviously they would know that the totem was being attacked or was killed. So you could place this down in, say, paths that you knew the opposite faction were going to head towards. You could place it down in flag rooms. You could do so many things with this, but realistically it would only have usefulness in PvP or arenas or even battlegrounds. Like, there was no real use for this in a raid environment unless you're watching a pack or if you're keeping an eye on some particular event. But realistically, PvP was where this really saw use. In today's environment, there's very little use for this, as there's really, again, only the battlegrounds that you could use this for. Really a cool talent, but this also got taken out in Kata as well. The next ability, guys, that I would like to roll into is the Hunter, Eyes of the Beast. This is a super cool talent, but again, I only saw minor usefulness as it was a very specialized sort of talent. Now, Eyes of the Beast, this would basically mean that the hunter could take control of their pet directly, basically seeing through the eyes of the pet. This means you could roam around and search out and scout out certain things. This was great for pathing in raids and checking out where to go and such like this, but it was commonly used for pulling mobs from afar, and in doing so, skipping a lot of trash or mobs you didn't want to go through, or paths you didn't want to go through a raid or a dungeon. Again, it's another cool talent. It did get taken out in Kata, but it is just super cool to see abilities like this that were in the game. These days, you don't really get a lot of this other than the Shadow Priest's Mind Vision that you still have. There's really not a lot of these sort of far-seeing abilities left in the game, and this Eye of the Beast, taking direct control of your pet, was just a super cool ability that you could use and, you know, well, roam around or scout out places that you needed to go. Again, it's another talent, another ability that doesn't see much usefulness in today's environment. Maybe a little bit in PvP again, or, you know, again, pulling a mob into Stormwind, say, or something similar, but not so much anymore. The other talent I would like to roll into after this is the Rogues. Now, this is the Detect Traps. I think that this was a super cool ability, guys, and I remember using this inside of ICC a lot. I was tasked with going ahead of the raid and finding the traps in the first part of the corridors, so much so that I was tasked to do this and then eventually change back to my main to raid with the group. So basically I was told, get on your rogue, go out and detect the traps, disable the traps, get to Marigra, change off your rogue, go back to your main. I think that this was just a simple cool a talent realistically. It was changed to become passive. It used to be an ability you could use to increase the range and detection range of detecting traps, but then it was changed to a passive, so whenever you were in stealth or whenever you went, you know, into a stealth mode, you could basically go and see those traps and disable them before the raid got there. Really cool talent, guys. I think it was awesome. Again, Blizzard really don't put traps in raids or dungeons anymore. Realistically, there's no use for it. This was taken out in WoD. Really, it survived for a while, but no. If Blizzard go and the devs put more traps back into the game for whatever reason, maybe you might see something similar like this come back up, but not anymore. So the other talent here, guys, this would be number 5 out of my top 6, or my super 6, I should say, is the Death Knight ability, Shadow of Death. Now, again, this was a talent used on the original talent tree for the Death Knights. A cool, super cool talent that basically has been dropped and left by the roadside, so to speak. Shadow of Death did a so like two things. It was a passive ability that you could basically increase your strength and stamina by 2%, but when you died, you would return for 25 seconds as a ghoul, and you would get the ghoul abilities, such as, you know, your claw, your gnaw, your rake, all those sort of abilities that the ghouls use, you would get too. Now, the cool thing about this was it used to be on a 45-second use. So you would res with 45 seconds, you'd be a ghoul for 45 seconds, going around doing some damage, but they deemed it was too strong, so they dropped it back to 25 seconds, and again, they got rid of it. It only really lasted a few months in-game. They did change it in a way that when you resed an ally, you know, the original B-res, so to speak, your ally would become a ghoul for a certain period of time and use the ghoul abilities. Again, they didn't see much usefulness for this, and they said, well, let's make the Death Knights summon ghouls and then give them a proper B-res, so to speak. It is such a cool ability and talent, and I really would love to see abilities and talents like this come back to the game. But again, it was dropped. It only lasted a few months, this version of the talent and ability, and it's gone now. So it's just the way it rolls. So the next one we've got here is the Warrior's Mocking Blow. Now, I know Tibz, you asked for this one specifically, and you did say that Prospect could not utilize this. So Mocking Blow, guys, is a really cool ability. It basically was on a 1-minute cooldown that you could use at any time, even when you were stunned, and you would taunt and pick up targets or mobs, basically. They would attack you for 6 seconds. This had many uses, and I would even go out and say that this would still have a couple of uses in today's environment. Granted, very limited uses, because we have now Tricks of the Trade and Misdirect to sort of replace this in a way. But basically, you could taunt a mob, or mock it basically to attack you, as the tooltip basically reads, and that mob or target would attack you for 6 seconds. But after the 6 seconds, it was duly noted that a lot of the times the mobs would just go back to something that was hitting. So if a healer picked up aggro on a mob and you were a Fury or a DPS warrior, and you used Mocking Blow, you could use it within 10 yards. It would attack you for 6 seconds, but it was noted a lot that it would just turn back and start attacking that healer again. Kind of strange and weird at the end of the day, but it is what it is. It was taken out in Kata. I was surprised that it actually lasted all the way up until Kata. I thought that this would have been taken out quite a long time ago, seeing as I've never ever heard of Mocking Blow. But again, it's just another talent and ability that Blizzard seemed that it did, or deems that it was not useful anymore in the game. So, guys, that is my Super 6 talents and abilities that really have been taken out. Now, Tibz, I am sorry, I couldn't find any more useless spells and talents. I really couldn't, because every time I would look up an old spell or talent that had been removed from the game, in some way it sounded cool or intriguing or had a small amount of usefulness in today's environment. So I tried my best, and a couple of these do sound really cool. A couple of them are useless, I get it. But that is it, guys. That is my Super 6 talents that well, are useless in game now. And Tibz, I thank you so much for the question, mate. I really do. This is something I really like doing, guys. If you really want to be like Tibz and post a question, please do so on my Discord page. I will get to that ASAP. But until next time, everyone, have a great day.